Our next speaker is a very bright young man. Now, when I say bright, I don't just mean that he's smart, although in fact he is quite smart. What I mean is that he's a very bright light in an incredibly dark place. I think you'll find that he's just not the sort of guy you'd expect to meet in a place like this. Please welcome Jarrelle Marshall.
What's the one thing you can't live without? Don't everybody answer all at once. Think about it and answer the question to yourself. Being here for a few hours without your smartphones and tablets, I can imagine some of you thinking about those. And I don't blame you. It's as if you're separate from the rest of the world, right? Welcome to prison. I can also imagine that some of the other things running through your mind might be stuff like love, family, coffee, bacon. Trust me, I get it. But if you were to ask me what's the one thing I absolutely cannot live without, I would tell you hope. I know because I've done it. I've experienced life without hope. It wasn't a conscious decision I made, but it was surely a consequence. You see, I represent the youth, the children all around America charged and tried of crimes in adult courts and sentenced to serve just as much and or more time than they've been alive. In 6 by 9 foot cells, firmly embedded behind menacing barbed wire fences and insurmountable walls. I represent those who today still bear the burden of being branded born criminal and super predator. These are labels attributed to two theories that have long since been discredited, yet still persist in tainting the perception of children that are charged and tried of crimes in our country today. But aside from representing the chained children of our society, I also represent the men and women sentenced to serve obscene amounts of time behind bars. I'm talking decades stacked upon decades, quarter centuries, half centuries, whole centuries, life. I represent those classified as lifers. Not so much because I share their time structure, although a lifer is loosely defined as one serving 15 years or more in prison, but more so because these lifers, who are the so-called worst of the worst, planted a seed that helped me gain a grip on life in a critical moment when it seemed that all hope was lost. Now, thankfully, the man standing before you today is neither hopeless nor lost. However, this wasn't always the case. And at my lowest point, I was near being both. I couldn't imagine how I would survive well over a decade in prison, let alone imagine eventually being released. Trust me, I tried. All of my adult life was going to be spent behind bars. And as a teenager looking to my 30s, I may as well have been looking to my 50s. That was my mindset at the time. But a turning point came for me one day after having a conversation over a meal with a friend where I nonchalantly but honestly expressed not having any hope of ever going home. I'll never forget the look on my friend's face after having heard me say this, because it was accompanied by tears welling up in his eyes. With a smile, which I knew was to keep the tears from falling, he said to me, "I have hope for you. But you've got to reach and find that hope within yourself. And when you find it, never let it go. This won't last forever." Simple yet powerful words. In order for him to have had a shred of hope in another, he had to first possess it within and for himself. What could I say to that? What I wanted to say was, I have hope for you too. But I didn't, because I couldn't. And I was ashamed. All night I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without saying, "How dare you? How could you?" Here I was with a relatively soon release date while that of my friend was off in the next century. Yet he had hope. That experience of inspiration and compassion put me on a path to restoring hope within. Now, some of you may be asking yourselves, how do lifers have and maintain hope? Why do lifers hope? Do lifers even have that right? Well, the answers to these questions are the same as they would be for anybody. we all have and maintain hope by speaking and breathing life into them through our actions. We hope because it's necessary, because it instills within us purpose. And the right to hope, well, that's something we all share equally. But where we differ, if at all, is in what we hope for. Speaking from firsthand experience and interaction, I can attest that life is hope for healing, for harm done by us as well as that done to us. We hope for forgiveness, for wrongs committed by us. We hope for redemption, to seek to make amends however possible, wherever possible. We hope for a voice, for healthy and productive expression, and to communicate from that place others often overlook us as having, the heart. And we hope for a second chance at a meaningful life to contribute to the world. In our society, however, it seems as if we've developed this habit of defining who's deserving of opportunity as well as selectively divvying out second chances in life, when a basic fact of humanity is that people can and often do change and improve who they are. Every single person in this room has been a recipient of or in need of a second chance at something at some point in our lives. Yet we fail to acknowledge this. We fail to acknowledge that people are not solely what they have done. My understanding of the worst is of one who is irredeemable. I mean, why else would we throw a person away to spend their entire life in prison? Is one who hopes for redemption truly irredeemable, or do we just label them as such to justify treating them as we do, essentially subjecting them to life imprisonment, which is, in reality, death in prison? Although a person may be a lifer, by no means is it accurate to label them the worst and say that they will always be so. I find it impossible to accept that all these men, women, and children are good for are being prison's version of Walmart greeters saying hello and goodbye at the door, but never having their opportunity to leave. I hope for them. I hope for them because I'm one of them. I hope for them because I was inspired by them to have hope in the future, to have hope for myself. And along the way, I discovered something. I discovered that hope implies, or rather demands, action. It's not something that's simply wished for and then waited upon. It requires energy, it takes work, it takes commitment. The work of Dr. Martin Luther King is a great example of following up hope with action. This man's hopes and dreams for a better tomorrow manifested through his work until the day his life ended. And look at Obama's Hope for Change campaign. In order to make that dream a reality, the American people had to unite in a way they had never done at any other point in history. Hope demands action. So I ask, who in here will hope for lifers beyond these walls? Who will be the voice for the unheard men, women, and children and carry their cries for a second chance? Will any in here put rubber to the road at this critical moment and take whatever action you can to instill hope in place of the crumbling and cracked walls of our current criminal justice system? Will you? I have hope that you will. Thank you.